Good morning. I'm here to talk about my favourite subject, BIM. So I've been, a bit of background for myself, I've been with JLG for around 7 years. I've been in manufacturing, off-highway design for about 24 years. I'm a pure mechanical engineer, so this foray into digital engineering is something new for me. My team has been looking at BIM within JLG for about 2 years. And it really started as a kind of pet project. We got interested in this, what is this new digital technology that is coming, and we started looking as engineers and we got very excited. And I'm going to try not to bore you too much with the details here because we can really get into the nerdy stuff and get into it. So I'm here to introduce JLG BIM. So I'm going to start with a little video here, and this is really just try to level set everyone in the room around BIM. So BIM is the transformation from a 2D transactional process within the construction industry. So typically what happens is the client lays out, I need a building or I need some infrastructure. 2D drawings are built, are raised, and this gets transacted through the business. And what tends to happen is a lot of mistakes are made, changes are made, and these aren't communicated. So they transition into this, we've transitioned to this 3D model where a lot of information is being put into the model. All the teams that are involved in the project, or stakeholders, all look at the model, so it's a single safe source of information for that project. And now what we're finding, especially in Europe, people are starting to ask now, well, I want machines, I want machinery to go into these models so we can start planning logistics, construction processes, and various other things. So JLG started producing models. We started getting a lot of great feedback, so we basically created a library for these parts. But you can see here in this video, kind of outlining the idea. I'm not kind of futuristic, but this is kind of the idea of people standing around looking at that one piece of information. So in essence, I'm going to talk about it in two ways. What is it for the construction industry, and then what is it for the rental business? So here's a simple video to talk about why BIM is important to the construction industry. This is a very simple illustration. It's a machine that somebody made to measure the door of an old church in the UK, but they forgot to measure the top of the door, and it arches over. So the machine was brought in, didn't fit. So the idea being that you can use a digital technology. You could scan that door, you could bring that into CAD, or you could have the model of the building, and then you could bring the models into that scenario and check it fits before it leaves and before you deliver the machine to site. I mean, that's going to save money as well. And it's really about giving customer the peace of mind. So he's had that upfront, understanding that this is going to work. This is going to deliver a solution. So when we talk about JLG BIM and for the rental company, we want to talk about this term first in, never out. And it's we say, what are we talking about? I'm going to talk about this in BIM and the transaction process across what BIM is and the construction process. So we believe that leveraging BIM and IoT or telematics technologies will allow the rental companies to get engaged from that very, very early concept phase right the way through to that in production or the construction phase through the telematics, and then beyond into the maintenance phase. And how we do that, and how we look at that. So we have here is the REBA planner works. So it goes from very early strategic definition, client says, I want something, right the way through to building in use, the full maintenance. And I mean, in some cases, you look at hospitals, the UK government are planning 50-year maintenance schedules for hospitals. So they're looking at very long term. The BIM planning starts around kind of the preparation of briefs. So this is where the architect creates the nice drawing, the sort of, the artistic impression of what he wants. But as we move through those phases, more and more stakeholders get involved. So the contractors for the steel erection, the contractors for the M&E, the cladding, they all start bringing their models to bear on this particular design, and they start getting to the point where they can build a building. Then we move into the plan, do, check, act, as we say in engineering, this kind of construction process, this constant flux of building, finding problems, replanning, building. And then we get into facilities management. So this is where you need machines to go in and maintain that and keep the operational expenditure of that building down as low as possible. But what we're finding is a lot of projects now are actually planning this maintenance phase right in at the beginning of the BIM, so we can get in there. So we start saying here, well, if you can get early with BIM and you get your machines into that fabric or the design of the building, you can be first in. And then if you're being designed in at the beginning, you're never out because you're in for the maintenance. And it's what machines do we need to bring in to maintain that building in the future? So this is a little video just to try and demonstrate what our machines do and how people would utilize BIM. The story is I want to get a machine through the car park entrance and to the third floor window. I mean, it's a very simple example that we illustrate. So the engineer's looking to say, well, what machine am I going to need? They can go to the library, they download the model, and then bring that model into their construction plan or their building plan. You can see in the models here, there's a lot of information already, just visually. Within the scissor model, there is a working envelope, so an area of reach around that, so there's a shaded area. But there's also the turning radiuses, so they can bring that model in and look and see how that's going to fit through that car park entrance. So no one's had to go to site, no one's had to measure it up. They can just do this virtually. Now, will the machine reach that window? So they bring it in, place the model where they think it wants to go, and then now you can articulate that model, so you can change how that model reaches. Our models have been designed to make that as easy as possible. And you can see here, also within this table that the engineer is going through, is this coming up? There is a lot of information. So there's a lot of data around the machine. There's a machine mass, ground bearing pressure, fuel consumption. Anything you want to know about that machine is built into that model, so the engineer can interrogate it. So what are we trying to deliver from JLG? So as engineers, we sat down and we started talking about this and said, well, we're going to be giving these models to architects and civil engineers who probably don't really know our machines, don't know how these machines work, and they want to make sure the machines are correct. So we started off saying, well, we need to make them accurate. So the first thing we did was we went straight from our CAD system. We brought the development of these models into JLG. We didn't subcontract them out. We actually did them in-house. And the way we did that was we took our very, very detailed CAD design, engineering design of the machine, and we translated that into a lighter weight or a smaller file for the architects into Revit, which is the architectural tool of choice. We also maintain those models within our engineering database. So every time an engineer makes a change, we assess that change through our database and make sure that change is, if it's needed, reflected in the model on the website, and then we update the models to keep them as fresh as possible and up to current spec. We then sat down, well, we need to make them easy to use. Architects don't use our machines, they don't know how they work. So you can articulate the models, you can move them, you can rotate them, but we needed to make it intuitive. So the best thing to do is, for the architect, is I want a reach and a height. So he goes into the model, he selects a reach and a height, and the machine self-configures to that articulation on that particular job. So it'll always be reflective of how that machine is going to operate in reality. And then we had to make them data rich. So as an engineer, my life is all about data. How will this machine work on site? So within the model can be interrogated by the engineer to get this information. So there's a visual information, which is the working envelope you can see here. We have the turning radiuses and the reach area around the basket. But then also inside the model, or being able to open up a text box in that model, there is information around the ground bearing pressure, mass, dimensions, fuel, battery life, anything you want to know, noise, anything you'd want to know about that machine is in there. So we have a partnership with BIM Object. And the reason we went and partnered with BIM Object is that they are the global leader in supplying models to the construction industry. They have around 1.5 million hits to their website every month. And they have built-in user analytics. So within this tool, we can see who's downloaded what machine where in the world. So we can see that an architect in Dubai has downloaded a machine. We can see what machines they've downloaded, when they downloaded them, and then we can also, if they've ticked the right GDPR boxes, we can then connect with that person on LinkedIn or through an in-mail service within that portal. And this gives us very good insights into what machines are being used. It also, we feel, would give rental companies great insights into what projects are coming up and what architects are using models, and being able to make that early contact and be able to build that relationship early on. So I'm going to try and illustrate the power with the project. So this is a project we worked on with the partner Sir Robert McAlpine. So when we started this process, we looked out there, and luckily enough, locally we have Sir Robert McAlpine near us in Leicestershire. They're working on the Battersea development project. This is a 1920s Art Deco power station that is now disused, but they're developing it into sort of a living, working area in central London, right on the banks of the Thames. And they're very keen. The biggest worry they had about the project was the congestion, the sheer congestion of the construction site, the congestion of the city. How are we going to move material to and from site? What machines can we get in? Where are they going to go? And they've built a full model of the construction process of this project, including the logistics paths, the construction process, putting the cranes in, everything. So when we started talking about BIM to them, they got very excited, and they asked us, could we supply models? So we developed a model, gave them the model, and they wanted to understand, will an 1850 come on site? How could they get it on site? Will it then fit into an area around the cranes, around the lifts, and gain access to the cladding operation they wanted to go through? And this is the model we gave them. It's a rendering, but this is kind of the model we gave them. They took that model, and they wanted to know what the max wheel load was. So they interrogated it, took the information, but they found a problem. And they found that the Ultra Boom, because it's sitting on a basement floor, was at max load was too heavy for that basement floor, or basement roof, sorry. But this was way before any construction had started. So they went back to the client and asked the client, in certain areas, could they prepare a higher loading for the concrete, where the areas where these machines are going in. They changed the spec, so they were able to bring the machines in without backpropping, without any kind of platforming. But this also gave them the ability to, in the future, bring that machine in for maintenance. So now the ground and the area is prepared. So we talk about this future, and first in, never out. Now that machine has come in, done the job, but it's going to come back year on year for any maintenance needs in those buildings and glazing requirements in the future. Then we talk about what's next. So we talk about augmented reality. So again, as engineers, we sat down and goes, what is this technology used for? Who's using this? Well, this is kind of the big companies who have engineers sitting behind CAD stations. They can access this information quite easily. However, the contractor on site or the smaller business, they may not have that CAD systems. They may not have the engineer. So how can we democratize that information into the mobile phone, give it to the people that can access that information? So we've taken those CAD models, or those BIM models, and we've translated them to augmented reality. So now what you can do, or we're going to release an app early next year, is you can now take your phone, you can select a model, and you can place that model into the scene you are, into the reality you are. I have a demo, so if you want to see afterwards, I can take you through a demo of that technology. But you can see here we have a Pico lift in against the real one, and you can extend it. You can then check for clashes as well, and you can check it's going to fit into that scenario. It's going to fit through a door. It's going to reach to the area you want to go. So it's, I don't know if you guys, IKEA have an app for their furniture, very, very similar. Place your furniture in your living room, and you can see where it goes. So we've, as we've gone through the BIM journey, we've decided, well, how can we help our rental partners exploit this technology? How can we help them get to those early leads, get to that embedding early into that project? And we've created a service we want to call a freemium service, or a free service. So we go from a free service, which is where we can take our library information and embed that into your website. So we can give you a link or an embed code to your IT department. They can then embed that model or embed that link to that model into your website. The problem with that is it means when the customer goes and downloads the model, they leave your website. So they go to our BIM object site and they download the model there. So they wouldn't necessarily maybe come back to you for the information. So then we go to another service where we can actually then create you a library, and we can embed that library into your website, which will always keep the customer on that website. And they can get access to the three-dimensional machine. We can brand the library. So now you have 2 points of access. You have your website and BIM objects. You have access to that 1.5 million users information. We give you the embed codes to go onto your library. There'll be no click-throughs. So basically, when that person comes to your site, wants to download the model, they stay on your website. And you get the user analytics. So that user analytics I showed you earlier in terms of who's downloading what, you'll get access to that information as well. And then we took it one step further, and we said, well, we can offer, or we also offer a third-party model. So we will host any models that you have, and we'll manage that site for you. And then we said, well, can we take it a step further? How can we start getting your brand into these models, getting your brand into this three-dimensional virtual construction process early on. So we take the BIM service and we give it a BIM Service Pro. So basically what we do is we brand your product and then give you a branded model. So you can then download, the engineer will download a branded model into your into their model and see. So what that does is it gives you 3 areas of customization. We can color the machine, we can add your logos, but also what we can do is with that data I talked about earlier in terms of the embedded data in the model, we can change that to suit your business. So we can add links back to your website. We can add contact information. We can add your fleet information. And what this does is when that model gets downloaded, you lose that link between the model and you, the business. But if you're looking at the Pro or the completely customized model, when that's downloaded, that information then travels with that model. So wherever that model ends up in the business, say he takes a construction firm like BAM, 250 subcontractors, they take the model and they start distributing that model amongst their subcontractors. You can see that brand starts permeating through the business and the contact information remains in there. And that really concludes my very, very quick, without getting too much detail into the detail on BIM. And I'm very happy to spend a lot more time talking about BIM if you want to come and find me at the JLG desk. But again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me now, or you can come and see me a bit later on. Thank you.